Hi there, it's Natasha and thank you so much for joining me today. Today we are going to create a nice simple card. I'm using three colours, worn lipstick, spiced marmalade and fossilized amber of distressed oxide inks to create the background. And I'm doing it on some Ranger Tim Holtz watercolour cardstock, and just because it blends nicely on there. You could also use some Bristol smooth paper. I find that they blend really nicely on there too. I've sped this process up lots because it's super simple and you get the gist of it. You don't have to see me do it in real time. And so I'm just adding kind of splotches all over my card of these three colours. And no rhyme or reason, just wherever. Although you do have to be a little bit careful because these are oxide inks, they stay wet a little bit longer than, for example, dye inks. So I'm just using a little scrap of paper so that I don't get my fingerprints in the wet ink. So I'm just going back and forth with each of the colours to make sure that they have kind of the best blend that I can get. And then I am using my heat gun to make sure that they are nice and dry before I carry on with the next step. I'm going to use two stamp sets today. This one is the Paper Smooches Botanicals 3 that I'm going to use, and then I have this one from Aliexpress, and I'm going to use the Thinking of You and the little flower out of that one. You should just use whatever stamp sets you have, and you can definitely create this shape using whatever little branches or leaves or anything that you have in your stash that would work, that has a bit of a curve to it. So I've popped these on my misty lid and using some VersaFine Onyx black ink. Nice. I like this ink because it's really black, really dark, and it stamps really well. However, because it is a pigment ink, you need to be really careful because it stays wet, and which is a good thing because that means that you can do embossing with it, but it also means you need to be really careful when I'm moving my card around like this that I don't smudge the ink everywhere. And I don't do too bad a job. I do end up getting a couple of little smudges, but we can always use clever placement of things to cover those up in the end. So I've stamped these twice. I've just turned my card upside down and stamped it again, which creates that nice little place in the center for my sentiment. And then I'm using my heat gun, as I said, to keep drying it to try and stop me from smudging this ink. So now I've got my little sentiment, the Thinking of You sentiment, and I'm going to put that right in the middle and put it on my misty. And again, I'm just going to use the VersaFine Onyx black ink, just the same one, and stamp it in the middle, and it stamps beautifully the first time. As I said, keep drying it. I will still smudge the ink though. Keep drying it. And then I do see this little flower, which I think adds just a little feminine touch almost, a little extra detail. So I end up just using a little acrylic block to stamp out that little flower. And you may have noticed that in my review, in a little haul I had a couple of weeks ago of a little acrylic block, and I didn't think it was holding the stamps well. A few people suggested that there was a really thin layer I needed to pull off, and you were right, I did pull off the layer from each side and it works just fine. So thank you so much for your help. I'm stamping the little flower twice, and then of course I did heat set it, and then using my Fiskars paper trimmer to trim up. I end up having to trim up quite a lot for it to fit on this card with the little black border that I had with the black mat. So I'm trying it once again because I'm noticing that there are smudges appearing. And then I'm just using some double-sided tape and doing my trick with just folding back a little bit so that I can center it on my card nicely. I am keeping both of these layers flat on this card when I put them on. No real reason, just what I felt like for the day, I guess. And so doing exactly the same thing that I did with the black matte layer, pulling off a little corner of each one and folding it over, just so that I can center it nicely. And then pull the little tabs out when I have it all centered. And then, of course, to fix those little, you can see one little blotch in the bottom right hand corner there. I did pretty good, but as I said, I did miss that one. So I am using some white Nuvo drops, and they do end up picking up the colour of the Distress Oxide beneath them, so they turn whatever colour is underneath them, so they haven't stayed white, which is cool. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks, bye!